Hey everyone, Commander Knox here. Today we're going to be talking about classic LEGO City and talking about the time frame of 2005 through 2011 specifically. So in a lot of my videos, I always refer to myself only building in the 2005 through 2011 era. We're going to look at why I believe the theme started changing in 2011 and talking about why I enjoy this time frame more than the newer releases, and talking about why I'm building my city in it. So originally I was going to title this video The Golden Era of LEGO City, but I wanted to make a more neutral approach because I feel like that could be different for everyone depending on what you enjoy. But this time frame is what I consider the golden era of the theme. So the term classic is kind of a subjective term. If you look at it as an adjective, it's judging something over a period of time to be of the highest quality and outstanding of its kind, or as a noun, a work of art recognized and established value. So, LEGO City isn't the first theme focused on familiar everyday vehicles. We can look at LEGO Town, which came before it. So it's interesting that I'm using the term classic because people who think of Town might consider that classic, but it really is subjective. So why do I consider this era of LEGO City to be classic? Well, the first thing is, of course, nostalgia. So I was a kid during this time, so this era, of course, holds the most personal charm and familiarity with me. And I'm sure that's true for a lot of people who grew up during this time. Your golden era of LEGO City could vary depending on when you played with LEGO City or what sub-themes you were interested in. But for many, this is a period that feels the most nostalgic and delivers a lot on the core themes. And I want to talk more about the themes. So during this time, everything felt fresh and new. LEGO really focused on its core city themes like construction, trains and transport, police, fire, and medical. These themes were simple, yet they reflected the basic elements of most real-world cities, making them feel familiar and timeless. It was a simpler approach, but it worked. And those foundational themes are still loved today. I'd argue the focus of LEGO City has become more diverse and less focused on the core themes. And I also feel like some of these sets have become more lo-fi and not as detailed and built out as the older sets. I want to talk about core identity as the final thing. So in the early days, LEGO City had a much more simpler identity. The focus was on open-ended play with less emphasis on external storytelling. Of course, they took advantage of new media, like you had flash games like LEGO City Time to Build and other forms of media during this time. But the LEGO play experience itself, especially in the earlier sets, wasn't as defined by pre-made narratives like we'd see with later things like LEGO City Undercover, the video game in 2013. Back then, the stories came from the people who bought the LEGO sets, the players themselves, letting imagination take the lead. And I remember looking at LEGO catalogs as a kid and planning out how I'd introduce certain workers or vehicles into my city and how I'd change the whole community just by adding them and stories of how they'd be introduced and things like that. So I think the older ones just offered more of a open-ended play experience. So what signified the change, and why do I think 2012 was when it started to be the cutoff? I think there were two main things that contributed to the end of the era for me, those being sub-theme expansion and the minifigures going through changes themselves. So before we dive in, for interest's sake, I'm going to look at some of these vehicles. In the top right, you see the garbage truck from 2007. 2016, it becomes even more detailed, and then that one in the middle, the green one, is even more detailed. And then we see in 2019 it kind of regresses and goes back to a more lo-fi, simpler build. Now, you might think that the ones in the bottom right or the bottom center are way more detailed, and I would say, yeah, they are a lot more detailed. So that might be what you prefer. Let's look at street sweepers. So here's an evolution of the street sweepers. I do like the modern one on the right from 2020, but I really like the designs of the 2005 model because it kind of echoes the design of the previous ones from the 90s. You can see that with like the front yellow piece right there that holds the brushes for the street sweeper, which I think is really cool that it uses older pieces from the 90s sets and makes it more familiar because I remember growing up my siblings had a lot of these sets from the 90s. All right, I want to take a look at these fire trucks, and right here on the top, so you see the classic Lego City one from 2005 on the left, and then on the right you see kind of the lo-fi one from 2025. It's interesting to see how the detail of the sets kind of regressed and went backwards in a way. And then you can also see this tractor from 2009 versus this tractor from 2025. Of course, you get other playability features, like they added sheep and this puppy and another lamb right there and a little trailer. But the detail of the actual tractor itself seems to have gone back. Another interesting thing here is you can look at the theme like Coast Guard. You can see these 2008 sets. Something like this would have made what you bought in 2008 old and obsolete. For some people, they might really enjoy this because they like having a more detailed version of these sets from 2008. But either way, it kind of signals that the end of an era came to an end in 2017 because they re-released the sets. All right, and let's talk about sub-theme expansion. So here we have the farm, harbor, space, coast guard, mining, jungle, Arctic, mountain police, and other sub-themes. Some of these you can argue fit into most cities like harbor, farm, or coast guard, while others might not. That's not to say these sub-themes aren't interesting or might offer more excitement for a newer audience, but it's kind of a reach to think that a lot of these fit into LEGO City. So let's talk more about the themes. So here's a breakdown of what I consider to be the core main themes that you would see in most cities. And then you have other themes that are harder to fit. So the main themes are essential things that most cities would have. Then you have things that some might consider city, like Coast Guard, Forest Police. But then it starts ballooning into things like Arctic, mining, space, and jungle. And it feels like these themes don't really have a place in the LEGO catalog as a whole, so they just put them in LEGO City. This for me is confusing because it confuses what LEGO City is and what its identity is, and it's why I kind of prefer the older era of sets. But yeah, this is just a main breakdown of all of those main themes and then the ones that don't really connect with them as much, like Arctic and jungle. The other thing I wanted to talk about was minifigures. So on the left, you see minifigures from 2005 to 2011. And then the very next year in 2012, you see new police officer outfits and new firefighter outfits, making the older uniforms obsolete. It signals a new change and shows the evolution of printed legs happening in the 2012 sets. And I really think this signifies that these are different now, they're updated, and the old ones are obsolete now that the new ones are out. So yeah, it was very interesting that that happened in 2012, and it's why I consider that year to be a cutoff. Another example I have are cars. So like you can see with the designs of the 2005 to 2009 cars, they have like bricks hanging off of them where you can build on top of them. Whereas you can even see this in 2011 and the 2012 to 13 ones. They all kind of have smooth hoods on the cars, and they have stickers all over them on the hoods of the cars too. So I think this also kind of signals that the designs were trying to get more modern at the time and look more modern and have less of that classic LEGO feel to them. All right, so I defined kind of why I think it is the cutoff, and now I'm going to talk about why I'm building my city in this time frame. So the reason I'm personally just collecting sets from the 2005 to the 2011 era is because the vehicles and builds have more real-world focus. The focus on these core themes make it easier for me to fit it into my city. So for example, having Forest Police or Arctic would force me to use more room to fit these sub-themes and have designated areas in them for my city. And I'm also excluding re-releases to keep the overall aesthetic the same. So like I could buy the re-releases of the Coast Guard sets from 2017, but I kind of want to keep the aesthetic the same feel as it is happening with my current LEGO sets. So I want to end this by talking about your golden era probably looks a lot different. I remember my little brother loved the LEGO City Undercover game. And you might be someone who grew up in that era and loves the 2013 to 2017 sets because you love the detail of those sets, but it's still knotted to the core themes. Or you might like the 2020 sets with a more minimalistic and simple approach. Either way, I'd love to hear what you guys think about this in the comments below. What do you consider the golden era of LEGO City? I'd love to hear from you guys, and thank you so much for watching, and keep building.